Let's start with a composition study because I know these are the first ones that I'm seeing from you.
Yes, I actually just decided to practice it. So what I did was I just made one. I know that
Mhm.
in principle you should maybe do several. So what I usually do when I do these is the rule of thirds kind of guides me since I have
Hmm.
some experience with photography, kind of think in those terms and
Hmm.
then thinking about okay, that's a fixed variable. What compositional spines are available to me
Hmm.
based on this head position. And then I could just choose one or experiment. I decided to just do something like a diagonal composition because that's where the model's eyes were looking,
Hmm.
like in the bottom left to top right diagonal.
Yeah.
So I just decided to, I don't know if vignette is the right word, but just have value on either side. That's basically my thought process here.
While you
Additionally,
were
yeah.
while you were telling me that, I just got to thinking. First of all, I got to thinking that Apple's new interface update can kiss my fucking ass
Okay.
because it worked so good before they fucked it up completely. All right, so that's pardon all the but that don't put that in the
I'll
don't put
bleep it.
that. Yeah. Oh my God. What they have done to like split screen interface is like criminal. You can either not have split screen at all, or they force you to have like a Windows-based multitasking
Mm,
interface that basically treats your iPad like a laptop,
uh-huh.
which
Yeah.
removes the need for it to be an iPad. Why would you care? Like it's a device that does a thing. Don't try and make it do a different thing. Um, okay, but that's fine. What I just got to thinking though, as you were doing this, and if you'll allow me the space to do it, I think that
Sure.
there's like some interesting educational ground that can be covered. So these are all these kind of Edgar Payne compositional spines, right?
Mm,
And then he's showing like what different landscapes kind of suit what different compositional spine. I've been thinking a lot about like kind of composition and portraiture, and it's possible sometimes to go a little bit. I don't want to say to go stale, but I mean it is ahead, right? And you need fresh perspectives. You need like kind of new ways to look at it that can kind of facilitate like a creative, outcome.
mm,
And I just had the thought for the moment. The way that he's composing these landscapes becomes so unique because of the diverse material that he discovers out in the world, for example, right? You go out into a landscape, there's a million different kind of views and variables that can generate shape and therefore generate ideas. So I just thought briefly, what would happen if you kind of juxtaposed or transposed some of these ideas like into a portrait setting? Like in a sense, could you use these to create a balance in a portrait that would be meaningful? I know this sounds a little bit abstract, but I believe that so much good comes out of like cross-pollination,
mm,
like taking obviously from one genre or one production workflow and transposing that over to another. Landscape succeeds so much for its variety, and obviously in portraiture we need that as well. So I'm just gonna mess around with this for a minute and see what happens if we try to use some of these shapes to kind of as like a template for the design of your portrait.
mm.
Listen, it could be completely a red herring. Is that, you know what a red herring is?
Yeah. I'm actually
Okay.
I remember hearing about the source or the etymology, what it was like the
Yeah,
where
okay.
it came
What is
from.
it? Yeah.
It's let me preface this by my memory is not perfect. So I believe it was a Nordic country and I want to say Sweden,
Mm.
but don't quote me on that or do, but also quote my caveat. There was a I want to say a fishing boat or some kind of scouting boat that started to see bubbles in a body of water. And this is, I believe it was during the Cold War. They started to see bubbles in some kind of body of water, and they decided for themselves that it was a Soviet submarine.
Hmm.
And so they allocated a lot of resources, military resources, to investigating it. And after, I want to say, like days or weeks of trying to find out where it went or tracking the bubbles, they found out that it was actually just herring in the water. And I think that's where the herring comes from, and the red comes from the Soviet red.
Yeah.
So it's like a clue that's misleading.
Yes. That's what this could be.
Mm.
To be completely fair, that's 1,000% what this could be. Now, the test would be to see if it actually generates anything in the neighborhood of an interesting idea. I was just looking at like the pattern of like light and dark on your model and just trying to see like what would happen if that pattern of light and dark in some ways, followed or tracked, some of the harmony that Payne has found in his kind of his world of
Hmm.
landscape. I think I suspect my suspicion is that there's more creative work to be done on this than this call will tolerate. Despite the fact I do feel like there's something there. There's something in it that I think could help generate kind of new ideas. And also, this is a little bit of a problem too of like kind of working from photographs and studying compositions. I don't know how you found like the process of doing it. As you said, you kind of just began doing it. I've been doing it for a while. I
Mm.
find it really, really challenging to generate new ideas, especially when working from photographs. Partly because they're already framed. I've said before, there's a few different reasons, but like if you see the image of me, if you have like a viewfinder and you're kind
Yeah.
of looking out at the world, the amount of variability in how you can see something from a different perspective is massive. A photograph is like it's so like already framed. I feel almost bound to compose it kind of like it was photographed. And so to find a new way to generate interesting ideas would be pretty serious, or in terms of like a development, would be really, really positive, really key if there was a way to do that via this plan that we're talking about here.
Yeah. I think I definitely see where you're coming from saying that photographs are much harder because it feels like you have some decisions were already made for you.
Hmm.
But in my mind, that could be a good thing. I
Mm.
think there there is something to be said about I guess it's the paradox of choice coming in again, but
Hmm.
con- constraints give some freedom to creativity. I like to see it in that way.
Yeah.
At least because I've only ever worked from photographs and never from life.
Hmm.
It's it just feels a bit maybe more comfortable, safer, maybe.
Mm. Well, definitely be familiar. I mean,
Yeah.
certainly by virtue of the fact of like having done it before, it's like the known quantity. To me, I find like, and I do like a creative constraint. Like in a lot of ways, I
Mm.
find that I get a lot of value out of that too, provided that there's like the necessary material to generate creative ideas. Like what I'm doing now to this, like just to say, and again, I know that we're going to get to also for sure, obviously your own very specific drawings about this. I think I find it kind of meaningful addition to my creative flow here in the sense that the way that I've treated the value in this, like, adding this large kind of chunky shape down here,
Mm.
blocking out the back edge here, even this and blocking out the light of the shoulder. Those are not things that would have necessarily like occurred to me like on their own. Like it's not when you think about like classical tropes of like framing a portrait, that's not really a part of it. And so it has given me like some kind of freshness in like how I think about just framing out. But and I think it's a kind of interesting composition. actually that emerges out of it. Now, let's be fair also, like there's things I changed too. Like in the Edgar Payne picture, there was a tree that kind of came up here
Hmm.
that I kind of ignored because it didn't seem to kind of fit anything. But if we use that, maybe that does something interesting also.
It kind of feels like I know that there's drawing worksheets where it's like complete the drawing and it's like a foot and a face and your task is to like connect them.
Hmm.
Kind of feels like that in
Yeah.
where the exercise is to try to try to marry disparate parts to like take this portrait photo and this compositional spine and try to fit them into an artwork, you know?
Yeah. And I feel like that's something honestly that and I've talked with colleagues of mine about this as well. That I feel like is something that's kind of missing a lot in traditional artist experience. So often when you think about like creative work being made, and I think you often think about that in the realm of like digital painters in their education, there's a lot more of this sense of like a prompt that asks for a solution, right?
Mm.
Make an angry tomato, or I don't know. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what it is, but like taking something that isn't and then turning it into that thing that forces a specific kind of like creative problem solving. Some of those things are like kind of sort of a little bit implicit in the act of like making a representational painting, but I think that particular dynamic is not definitely not often studied in ateliers and certainly almost never prompted in ateliers. It's always
Mm.
very much just draw the thing as it is. And so that creative thinking never really like takes root. Now, I'm not saying there's no creativity when you're just drawing obviously there is, but I would be naive to consider that somehow representational painters were able to sharpen their creative chops without doing these things that digital painters do, that somehow we get it for free, but they have to work for it. So maybe there's an extent to which like generating those prompts, working with a prompt concept could be like really, really beneficial. Again, this is a composition here. In a million years, I wouldn't have arrived at this just because why would I have? Like, why, like, what fundamental purpose does bringing value in here have? Even like generating the idea that there would be some cash out of the background here. I don't really have a reason for that, except the abstract prompt that is effectively that landscape.
Hmm. Definitely a idea generation tool. I think you mentioned digital artists and their prompts to prompt a creative decision or practice.
Hmm.
In some ways, I kind of see your boot camps in that as well. I remember
Mm.
we discussed a month ago or 2 months ago your boot camp about going straight in with your darkest pencil, like a 7B or 8 or 10B.
Hmm. Hmm.
I use the same phrase that you just used, where I don't think I would ever have done this, you know?
Yeah.
So, in that respect, the the fact I think you also mentioned that ateliers don't really have that sort of thing. I kind of see working with you or any other artists to like see, okay, what ways can we stumble on ideas or practice weird skills? you know,
Hmm.
it's very enlightening, enriching.
So let's just say if we apply a couple of these ideas to this drawing, which is interesting too, because you've actually come up with that solution yourself as well, like without necessarily the prompt, but to push that diagonal. And I mean, I assume there's some more work to be done on this drawing. Just for the heck of it, I'd say like, why don't we like kind of push that up a little bit? Why don't we like kind of take some of these things and just exercise them completely and see maybe what happens in the composition when we do that. I like the idea of pushing that left hand side back, and also taking that top edge of the shoulder that's on the left hand side and kind of darkening that down.
Mm.
And I think the same kind of with the one on the right. I'm not sure that the light shapes there necessarily do a lot for us, but alternately as well, like you can create, you know, in air quotes, kind of light on those shoulders by kind of darkening down a little bit the top that she's wearing, so that you have like some contrast in between them, despite the fact that they're not going to compete with the proper lights. And then kind of just unifying, I think, some of the lightest values in the face, despite the fact it will diminish a little bit the sense of form. I think it'll increase a lot the sense of light, which overall is like a pretty good thing.
Hmm.
Yeah. So maybe just a few changes to that, and I think you get a pretty cool portrait out of it.
Yeah. It does feel a little flat, and that's not your fault. It thinks it's more mine.
Mm.
On the model's right, that
Hmm.
there's a there's an edge, like a darker halftone that's kind of has a nice diagonal line that goes from the outside corner of her right eye to the right corner of her mouth. That kind of
Hmm.
frames that. Oh, is there like a name for the middle portion of the face? Like just like right
Oh,
there.
the I think
The
that
V.
Vanderpool calls it like the major plane of the face. Like
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
talking about like from here to here and
Yes.
here to here, like
Yeah.
this. Yeah. Yeah, Vanderpool's called it the major plane of the face. I don't know that that's like accepted across genres or across schools or anything, but
I think just some value there would help with the sense of form.
yeah. Yeah, for sure. Like a little bit more value across the I mean that this is the one of the true things about kind of working in that space is that for sure, if you are able to do it without creating kind of contradictory or bad edges, reinforcing planes is almost always a good thing. Now you can get into a place where like maybe you're like inserting like too much value into the head or different things that could cause a problem. But in general, like that makes the head look more round to hit that
Yeah.
that plane. Almost to the extent that I would say like if you see it or not see it, I don't care. It's mostly just gonna help. So I would kind of use it.
I think I have some kind of allergy or something to adding value. I can't seem
Mm.
to shake it.
Hmm.
Like I think my softest pencil here is a 4B.
Yeah.
And I did pick up I don't remember the name, the brand of it, but I picked up an 8B, and I used it a little bit for this, especially for the block in, but didn't bring it back out. I'm looking at the darkest value, well, the values of her top here, and I'm
Hmm.
wondering, is that an 8B, or do I need something darker? You know, I guess
I think it's about kind
I
of
should add
density and
pressure.
application. You can use a 4B and you can get pretty dark with it. Sure, like using an 8B can be a good thing, kind of get you over a certain threshold of darkness. Yeah, past that, it's about like the technique and how you use it. I mean, to me, I look at this and I think there's probably enough value here. Sorry, probably enough value here to like make most of what you need to happen in the drawing work. There's not like a shortage of value from a 4B. It's just knowing kind of where to put that pressure and where to give yourself the leeway to create that kind of density of value. Like if there's anything that I see is it's that the density of value is something you rarely reach, and that's a technique thing too. I remember at a certain point starting to teach this in my like in-person workshops, because it's hard to illustrate this in a video, let alone, in like a Zoom call. But like an area like this, let's say that it needs its dark value. What I've found to be the way that is the most effective to do it is to just take the hardest pressure that you can and really just make the shape of the value. Now that looks insane, right?
Mhm.
Like if your drawing looked like that, you'd go, "This is really bad."
Yeah, I've ruined it.
Yeah. Well, what I discovered though is that actually, if you have stumps and you have your fingers, really, like once you establish the value, a lot like painting, if you then start to like modulate the edges, start to push around the edges, you can really integrate that value into the drawing, and it's not a problem. It's just a problem to start. So a little bit of like manipulation can get that dark value to a place that actually fits into your plan and is not intruding on the overall idea. So like now that I do that, sure, it's not perfect. I mean, because it's not in balance with the key of the rest of the drawing. But effectively, the edges that we put in are not the problem. I found this to be very true working with like good soft graphite. In fact, one of the tests that I always do, and why I'm so appreciative of these Conte graphite sticks, is I do a smudge test. I have a sketchbook. It's unfortunately it's not on my desk right now. Every time I encounter a workshop student who has like a 9 or like a 10B pencil or something, I'll make like the darkest mark that I can. So I have like 4 or 5 of these, labeled and checked. And then what I'll do is I'll take and like with my finger, I'll smudge one end of it as hard as I can. Now, what a lot of pencils do is that they'll smudge like up to a point, but where the pressure has been the greatest, you won't really be able to get rid of it, right? Like what I'm doing
Mm.
now is like kind of true to like what most of the pencils are. However, the Conte sticks, what I've found is I can almost completely get that edge to disappear. Whereas like a traditional like Stadler or Derwent pencil, you can push it, or Mitsubishi, you can push it a bit out of the way, but you can't really get to that place that the Conte sticks do. So there's a little bit of a mid.
Did you
Sorry?
say Mitsubishi? Do they make pencils?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Mitsubishi makes some of the best wood pencils around. I think it's their high uni line. But they go all the way up to like a 10B, I think, in graphite, and it's pretty good. But again, there's this kind of smudging issue where it's like if it would smudge a little bit more, I'd be that much happier with it. So I consider like smudgeability to be like a massively desirable quality when it comes to soft graphite.
I've in my head, in my mind, that's one of the reasons why charcoal is desirable for
Hmm.
quick portraits because of the smudgeability. But I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't have enough experience to say for sure.
Well, the charcoal thing, I'd love to actually start testing out compressed charcoals again. Now the problem I have with charcoal actually lies here. It lies in the halftones. Because black is black. So I don't find that I have like a lot of control over, say, like light halftones. Like you want to make, say, this value here. Your options are smudge it, stump it, find something else other than your charcoal stick to make it with, which to me means like you have a little bit less control over it that's slightly not as desirable. Now, charcoal does like a lot of other cool things, but if we're talking about a compressed charcoal, I do think that some of the same kind of problems exist. With a vine charcoal, sure, you can get like more subtle halftones, but then you have a durability issue, which is where the vine charcoals become like less attractive to me. That let's say I make like a halfway decent drawing, I got to get it in a frame tomorrow, or
Oh.
like it ain't long for the world, like breathe on it and you have your whole drawing is kind of damaged. So, they have their drawbacks and their advantages. Every medium will have that. Over the years, in the longest run, I've just stuck with graphite, partly for that durability, partly for that control over the different value groups.
And is it also true that because compressed charcoal will go dark and you can't have very subtle light halftones,
Mhm.
does that mean that a lot of charcoal drawings are keyed very low value?
Well, it's interesting because I didn't have at the time one like critical piece in my toolkit. And it was I didn't smudge with my fingers when I used compressed charcoal.
Oh, you didn't use your fingers.
S-
Oh,
No, 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 no. I was coming out of my school, my atelier education, where, anything. anything fringe was like, ooh,
Is taboo.
being
Don't use your
morally
finger.
judged for, the way that you manipulate your charcoal. It's so stupid in retrospect. But nonetheless, it was the group think that infected us for sure. And so to me, like I would love like the reason I'm even thinking of like Conte or the Conte has a compressed charcoal kind of thing. The only reason I'm thinking of it is because of that. Like that I think that there's a chance that smudging could unlock some of the utility that previously was not accessible. Because there's some great things about compressed charcoal in terms of like dynamic range, getting your blacks, some of the textures that you can use. There's some really cool stuff involved. However, if you can't control your halftones, then who gives an S that you have like some of these cool effects?
And I still, personally, I think my aptitude for halftones, especially light halftones, is pretty bad.
Mm.
I guess that might be a strong word, but I feel like it's lacking.
To me, I feel like it's just something that comes with when you practice that, you're usually practicing it on a highly finished drawing with fully realized values. And so a good reason to consider that that might be behind a bit is because this is behind a bit. To really work in the halftones here, you would have to have established a value key that was like deep and dark and rich to kind of justify the variation in between the two. So I think when you start to solve that keying it dark enough problem, you'll have a better opportunity to practice your lighter halftones.
Mm. My mind goes to an idea of stages, maybe, or if stage one or zero was the shadow and light dichotomy, just two
Hmm.
values, and then moving on to four, a duotone shadow, and then a dark halftone, and then the lights.
Hmm.
And then the next stage would be however many. The light halftones are one of the last to come in.
Mm.
Is that right?
Mm. I mean, if you're doing things by the book, sure. Yeah. I think also though that depending upon your disposition or your workflow, I found for a while. Now, I want to also kind of confirm what you're saying. So
Mm,
yes, essentially you're correct. Presenting a very slightly alternate view would be to say that at a certain point, I also found some utility in using some halftones that are lighter to kind of establish structure and kind of build up to a highlight can be useful as well. Highlights are like a third contour, and if you kind of trace them down the head, right? Like so, if you say the highlight runs through here, across the forehead here, the eye, you can kind of track a little bit what the form is in relationship to the light. So it's not that the highest key lights, because that's what you need in order to frame the highlights. It's not that they're just the icing on the cake. I mean, they are indicative of a kind of structure that it's difficult to see otherwise. So if you find that to be like a useful prospect, you may consider that light halftones might come in at a much earlier stage and help you kind of build out the central section of the form in order to like see and understand things better. But that all goes into, your own role as kind of like a versatile artist. You might find that the lighting situations you work in or the workflow that you have, maybe that's a huge advantage. Maybe you might find that you never, ever in a million years need to do that. I remember it was a lesson that one of my teachers told me about that it took me like longer to understand. Also because he was a teacher that spoke more in kind of poetics than like practical things.
mm.
Like he would just say things like, he was from Venezuela, so he would say like, if this was my painting, the first thing I would do is just go down and track all of the highlights across the form. He
That's
didn't ever
good.
say why. Like he didn't say because of this and because of that. Like he would just kind of say, if this was my painting, this is what I would do. He's a really beautiful guy. He's a wonderful guy. Actually, one of
Uh-huh.
the few teachers that's actually really memorable to me. in terms of like his lessons, but always because they required a lot of like me connecting the dots. Okay, why would you do it that way? What does it give you? To me, it gives you an answer that you kind of can't get another way. You can't supply the information that the highlights give you from something else. You need to have them to know what that central section of the form is shaped like. So should they come in at the end? Well, kind of. But
I guess in the situation where you're using tone paper, they could come in earlier. Or
yeah.
I think you also mentioned something about a workflow. So in my head, I'm thinking if I just cover the whole face in like a HB, then I could
Mhm.
come in with my eraser and do this as well.
Yes. Well, yeah, exactly, right. So let's say you're not using white chalk, you're working on white paper. That's when, so this is exactly the point. That's when I was saying, like, should they come in at the end? Well, there might be a situation where you cover the entire face like this. Yeah, and then you're using your eraser to kind of bring them out. In which case, no, your halftones would be all over the place very fast. But that it just kind of depends upon, is that a practical way for you to work, you
Yeah.
know?
I actually remember you did that when in that same block in boot camp stage where you said to go in with the darkest tones. I remember
Mm.
you brought out, I don't remember what softness it was, but you just covered the face with it. And I was like, what the heck? I'm not gonna like I guess I'll just follow his lead then. You know?
Uh,
So
Yeah, it's a bit of a radical step, but it's funny. It's another thing that actually came from that exact same teacher. Like he had such like a good intuitive touch about things, or even I say it's intuitive. Maybe that almost sounds like a bit of a discrediting to it. I don't mean to. It's just that like his way of understanding things was not. It was not so much through like an academic language. It was more through
mm,
like a poetic language that I think he would understand things, which shouldn't be invalidated at all. A big part of what we're trying to do is like to capture a kind of poetry. But yeah, like he would do this thing wherein let's say that you had a form like, a tube or whatever it is. He would go through and like roughly, and it was very cool. We all thought it was very cool. I don't know if I can do it with this brush. Okay, let's see. He would like hatch across the form really loosely, like this.
mhm.
And then with like a bigger eraser, he would like erase away like whatever plane was meant to be like the highlighted or the lighter plane. And it would create this kind of illusion. But then he would go like back and forth across it like many times like this. And it creates like a pretty like intricate pattern of like cross-hatching, but in a way that also seemed like really efficient and very like expressive too. So you could like eventually like pull out the highlight and have it stand out in kind of a cool way.
You know, that would be an interesting um, drawing challenge to
Mm,
to always use your pencil to blanket the area and only
mm,
use an eraser to like etch out the forms.
yeah.
But
Oh,
that
I
sounds
like.
like an advanced one, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Like I struggle sometimes with where the boundary is between like, can I get people to do this, or is it too like far out there? But in general, I mean, I think anytime you set an adventure for people to take, like it's good. I think probably time is the biggest like boundary, the biggest barrier. Like if you set out something that's going to take people 20 hours, it's really hard to get people to arrive at that. So you try and like keep the scope of the time a bit further down. Yeah.
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, but this month's challenge, I think, is going to be a fun one too because I think it gives people something that I think is really important that they need a lot is like the freedom to find their own level. Like one of the things that block-in challenges always do is that they do keep it simple. So maybe you don't feel like you get to invest as deeply as you would like or to push something as far as you would like. So the idea of like bracketing it and saying, okay, here we have a block-in and then I want you to push the drawing as far as you can afterwards, and then submit both of them. I thought that was like a cool. Yeah, like a cool solution. It makes sure that you have the block-in lesson, but then gives people a chance to stretch their legs as well. But for you, I think, now that you're working in these compositions, I think it'll be a cool challenge because partly like I think when you do something that is let's say more we want to say it's more involved. Anyway, when you do something that has like a longer runway, I think you want to have that compositional idea in your back pocket as well. So what about this one? How was this?
It was all right. I didn't feel as happy with this one, and partially it took a lot less time. I tried to not be as precise as I usually am,
Hmm.
but I think maybe I overshot that or undershot it. I thought maybe I just give up on this one. But I think it was good practice at least. I decided to put the composition at the top, and
Hmm.
it kind of put me in a weird place because I usually just have the drawing on the page.
Yeah.
So it kind of felt like I didn't have enough space to work because I would have made this
Mm.
head a lot bigger. When I see it from afar, it feels very off balance because of the way you cropped it is good. And when I see it as I'm walking around in my office, I kind of
Hmm.
feel the composition feels very unsettling because of the way it's sitting on the page. I don't know. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's so off balance that I don't want to work on it. You know,
Hmm.
I just feel like you
Hmm.
just toss it. But if you can crop it in, it kind of feels more promising in a way.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Like I feel like I always want to work. I mean, this is what the first thing I did is like put a frame on. I
Mm,
always want to like work for the frame. Partly because it's like that. Well, being that you've been into photography, you understand like a frame is like a format. Without a format, I don't really know how you can compose.
hmm.
Uh, because then it's just I don't know, like it's open-ended. The composition could go all the way out to here. Who knows where it could go?
Yeah.
Nobody in the world ever composed that way before without some space to like fit something inside of. How do you decide what balance is or what harmony is or what a composition is? So yeah, like it would be unsettling to me also to look at a paper like this and go, what is the frame? I mean, maybe the fun, cool thing is that actually then you get to decide what the frame is. Maybe, and I've done this before. Maybe there's like a change to the frame that you need. Maybe it's about like maybe it's a better horizontal composition. Maybe it's a bit of a, like a tighter composition. Maybe that's kind of more interesting. There's a million different ways it could work, to get a cool shot out of this. But working on a larger paper and kind of paring down lets you do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that I have not. I can't think of a time I've ever done a horizontal oriented portrait.
Well, being a contrarian, as
Uh-huh.
I am, I've done, it's one of the first things I started doing in competition was like, I just thought, well, what if you did like a portrait and a landscape? Like what happens when you put that space to either side of the model? Like it kind of changes a little bit the dynamic. It changes how we see things, maybe in a very interesting way. I mean, sometimes it's not the right solution,
Yeah.
but I think I kind of almost always look for it like, oh, what would happen if da da da, you know?
It's funny, even in the names of the orientations, it's a portrait and a landscape. You use one
Yeah,
for portraits and you use the other one for landscapes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So that's what I would do with this is just play around with it and see like what frame feels like it works in the best way to you. But I don't see any reason why, or by the way, maybe it's not like a project that you're jazzed to go on with. That's fine too. But I mean, that's the first thing that bothers me about it is that I don't know how it's framed. So really, like at this point, I maybe really could only look at it as like a head study. One of the primary challenges with it too is the treatment of the mouth. I think from a light and shadow, structure form perspective, it's one of the toughest. areas because the shapes that it offers you are not necessarily ones that indicate what the feature is. So it challenges you to be maybe a little bit more abstract than you used to being. Like, for example, this passage here, it's not really anything that defines the space that is the lips versus what is the shadow on the roof of the mouth. Here you've opted to make a differentiation there, despite that there really kind of isn't one. Now, maybe sometimes you have to do that, maybe sometimes you don't have to do that. I think in this situation, the solution to the lips is more abstract than instead of like making it more real based upon what you think it is. I think it's maybe more being more abstract, and just letting it be as it is and kind of trying only to draw the things that it offers you, you know?
You're so right to point it out. And that's such a tendency of mine is to want to elaborate on something, the structure,
Mm.
when I don't need to.
Hmm.
Or
Oh
maybe
man,
when even when I shouldn't, you
my Venezuelan teacher. I have to tell you,
know.
he's the one who also said to me, if something is vague, you have to paint it vague. You can't over explain a vague area. You can't fix it by telling us more. You have to learn to be vague,
Okay.
which is a massive lesson for especially for painting, but drawing and just being efficient in general as an artist is like you kind of gotta like take what the source gives you, and do the right thing or the best thing with that. Sometimes it's going to be to, like I said, explain something a little bit more. Listen, I've been there and I'm an advocate for artistic license to make the picture work. There's just other times where that's not the right call, and you've just got to be prepared and ready to like make that call when the time comes.
Mhm.
But speaking of calls and times coming, I have a
Right.
call coming up right after this. What a
Okay.
segue! What a professional segue!
Beautiful. Like it was rehearsed.
Oh wow, Julian, it's always a pleasure talking to you, man.
Yeah,
And good work this month, and
thank you.
look forward to seeing you in the next one.
Indeed. Have a good
Yeah.
one, Stephen. I hope
All
your
right, cheers, bud.
paperwork works out. See you.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.